And den är Kalmar.
Come on, come over. Right, let's listen to my take on
Amazing. I'm actually so
super excited.
Fabiano's going to play another Sicilian.
So, Tanya,
Welcome to the 2018 World Chess Championship, a 12-game match between world champion Magnus Carlsen and his challenger Fabiano Caruana. After 11 games, the score is still level, which means that today, Game 12 will be the all-decisive final classical game. The winner of today will be declared World Chess Champion, and in case of a draw, we will see tiebreaks on Wednesday. I'm Anna Rudolph. I'm going to be your host, and our chess expert is Judith Polgar, the greatest female player of all time.
Hi, welcome everybody here at local and also online.
As we already announced, today's game can mean a new or old world champion. In case Magnus Carlsen wins, he will keep his title. And if Fabiano wins with the white pieces, he's got the white pieces, he will be the 17th world chess champion at the age of 26. How do you see their chances, and what do you think will be the strategy of Fabi?
Well, first of all, they're having, I think, one of the most difficult day of their life, for sure, both of them for different reasons. Of course, Carlsen is already having this moment, not for the first time, that it's a last game. Even though that he's playing with the black pieces and playing against Fabiano, who can be very dangerous, I'm sure he's not afraid of this game, but he would be more happy if it would be already 6-6, I think. And in other hand, he's waiting Fabiano to fight so hard and to create chances for himself so hard that maybe he makes such a mistake that even he can win the game of today. For Fabiano, of course, it's the day of his life. I mean, it's very clear that he was never so close to become a world champion as today, and these moments, just starting the game within a few minutes. So it must be very strange, very confusing, very stressful. In other hand, it is also the moment. So if he can live the moment, that really be only in the game and focusing only in the game, exclude all these things out of his head, which is absolutely almost impossible to do that. But I think it is the most stressful game of his life, no question about it. Well, about the fact that he's playing with the white pieces, and it is something positive. It's very clear that playing with the black pieces in the last round, last game, it would be a bigger problem. It was a huge surprise to me that Magnus was not playing for a win in game 11.
I think he surprised all of us, basically.
I don't
know if his team even knew about it, because sometimes Magnus makes decisions that he just keeps it for himself. So I'm curious if the team knew that Magnus was not going to try. Maybe they were the only ones, but everybody else in the world was surprised about Magnus's approach.
I don't know, for example, it would be interesting to talk with the seconds and the team of Fabiano, whether they were considering this, because, of course, Magnus, for example, did this strategy in 2016 World Championship against Karyakin, with the white pieces in the last game. So that's a difference.
It's very different.
In the last game, he was practically not even thinking about too much of a winning. It was a very smooth game. It was very similar as the previous game. Actually, it was also Petrov. In the beginning, I was still thinking, when I was commentating, that he wants to go slow and he wants to get a long game. And then it was very clear that also early, I don't know, moves 13, 14, 15, something like that, they started to exchange pieces, and it was very straightforward message that this game is going to be a draw. But immediately he went on to the playoff there. And of course, there was a huge roller coaster ride for him when he lost game 8. And after that, it was a miracle how he really came back in that match. And then, of course, the only thing he could think about, I think, to equalize the match and then go for the playoff. And that was a great decision. But here, I somehow it didn't come to my mind that already game 11, when you would think that with the white pieces he will give everything into that game because there is going to be a 12th game, which is he has to play with the black pieces. Even though that in this match we cannot say that black was suffering too much, but in the second half of the match we can see that black had some problems and difficulties and had to fight for a draw in a few games. But still, to have game 11 after a free day, to play the way Magnus played in move 13 or something, he exchanged the queens, and after knight h4 he really went on to exchange everything to a different color bishop. I think we had more moves already draw a different color bishop than the previous moves before. And it was shocking for me. I don't know how surprising it was for Fabiano, but one thing is sure, by making a draw in game 11 this way, the way Magnus did it, it means that he doesn't want to handle the pressure. And he just put all the pressure which was on his shoulder and put it on Fabiano. That,
Here you go.
Here you go. Handle it. It's not going to be easy. I'm ready for 6-6. From my point of view, everybody says that I'm better in rapid, just for you to know. Everybody knows that. So go kill me in game 12, and then you're going to make risk that I may win the game because of that. So it is a very interesting strategy and psychology behind it. But on the other hand, we shouldn't forget that it's not by chance that we had 11 draws in the previous games. But the players are here nearly more than 20 days. They played and saw each other across the board nearly 60 hours. And I was checking, they played more than 600 moves. So they had to make quite a few decisions and tough decisions at the board. And I'm very curious how they will be handling it today with all this stress. And of course, the basic question is what opening will be played by Fabiano, because so far in every game he played one e4. And in the beginning, it was a warm-up phase of the match that he played the Rossolimo. It was solid and stuff. But then later on in the second half of the match, he really went on to play the open Sicilian, which we were a big fan of that. And everybody was very happy. And we really had very interesting games in that opening. And in both openings and most of the games, it's Fabiano who is giving the first surprise to Magnus. And well, kind of, it's not that I would be surprised today if it repeats this scenario, but I would be kind of surprised if not. So I'm very much looking forward what kind of surprise was cooked by Fabiano. In other hand, it's also a very big question what Magnus will be playing on e4. Because he might be just playing e5 and go for a more solid Ruy Lopez or even more solid Berlin or something, so that he really wants to hold the game for a draw. But if he plays c5, I think we are going to see something very exciting, something like in game 10.
What is your prediction? If we already mentioned that he might go for the Sicilian, is it going to be open Sicilian? Or in terms of the strategy for the last game, if Magnus believes that a draw would be great, let's go for the playoffs, will he switch to e5? What is your prediction?
In other hand, first of all, it is possible. Secondly, it is also very possible that Fabiano will switch. If he prepared and they were preparing for, let's say, a last game of a scenario, something like this, to have 5.5, 5.5, and the last game Fabiano is white, and possibly they thought, okay, we can go for d4 and just switch and turn everything around and have a completely different strategy. It's also understandable, but of course they had to make a lot of work on that. So it is the first real excitement, move 1. After move 1, we more or less know it's going to happen everything very quickly until move 8, 10, 12, something like that. But I think it is a very important thing whether he's switching from e4 for the last game or he sticks to the e4, believing that he has the best chance in e4. And it's also very important from psychological point of view for Magnus, because I'm absolutely sure that his mindset is on e4. And he knows that he will play the Sveshnikov or he plays something else. So it's a very big battle of thinking and guessing and figuring out what your opponent wants to start with. And really, if Magnus will deviate, if e4 already in the first move, and he goes for more solid lines than the Sicilian.
I'm really curious to see that myself. By the way, the intro video was about our volunteers, and we talked to some of our volunteers who also think that it could be e5. So, Judith, you are not the only one who predicts that there could be a change. If it's e4, Magnus Carlsen could go for e5. And maybe Fabiano will want to be the one who surprises Magnus. So far, he has had a better preparation. Team Fabiano has done a better job, it seems. But we shall see what the last game brings. Before we focus more on Game 12, let's listen to our spectators about Game 11.
I think it's a great venue. It was exciting to see them, and we've traveled a bit far to get here, so it was great.
It was just really nice to go in and watch and see all this commentary and everything going on in here.
It was really cool. It was really intense.
It was very exciting. I felt very flattered to be so close to two grandmasters, world's the best players.
It was so intense. I wasn't expecting, you could literally just feel the tension in the room, even behind the glass and everything. It was quite amazing.
I love this venue very much. I was also at the entirety of the New York match 2 years ago, so they have more space here than they did there.
I liked the most that it was a draw, so they wouldn't say, "Oh, I failed" or so. So they say, "I don't want to play anymore."
I'm slightly biased because I'm on Team Fabiano, so I'd love to see him win.
I definitely want a decisive game. I think they both do, no?
But it would be cool to see a match decided by just the classical games as well.
Yeah, but I think if it's going to be decisive, it's probably going to be from Caruana since it's white. And so I'm rooting for Carlsen, so I hope he wins.
A draw would be nice at this point. We didn't want to draw before, but at this point, a draw would be good, yeah.
Another draw.
I think either way it's going to be exciting and we're going to have a lot of fun watching it.
Because it may hurt one of their feelings.
On one hand, though, I kind of believe that Caruana is a bit weaker than Carlsen on Rapid, maybe. So if I want Caruana to win, I would probably want him to go at it tomorrow. So I'll go for a decisive result.
We would like to see a good fight, and hopefully one of them will win, just to have a victory in the classical games.
I prefer draw because I like rapid games and I think it's more spectacular.
I've known Fabiano Caruana since he was about 8 years old, so I would like to see him take care of business tomorrow. If he doesn't take care of business, then Magnus is a deserving champion.
I think I have to root for Fabi. I mean, Magnus has been champion for a number of years.
Fabiano.
And I've always liked Magnus. It's just a slight conflict of interest now that young Fabiano has grown up so much and he's taking the bull by the horns.
Hey Fabi, happy I could finally make it here to root for you. Hoping to see you back in the US soon as well, and wishing you the best.
Go on, Carlsen.
Go Carlsen, do it!
Caruana, you remember who you are. I'm sure you can beat him. Good luck.
Magnus, I know you've been there before many times. I know you've already won this. It might seem like you're getting a bit lazy with your preparation, but it doesn't matter. Now you're at the end, finish line, you can do it again. Just dig in, you have the real talent. You're the most talented, you can do this.
Come on, Carlsen. Good luck, Carlsen.
Play as strong as you can.
Good luck, Carlsen. You know you are the best.
Fabiano, you're going to have to put your best foot forward tomorrow. Move in and move out and take care of business, because I don't want you to have to duke it out in the Rapids, buddy.
Good luck, Fabi.
Good luck, Fabi. Hope you win.
Good luck, Fabi and Magnus. Hope you guys have a great time, and love from Wisconsin.
Oh, can I get your autograph?
I just love the messages they send to the players. I wish they could listen to them.
Yeah, maybe it would boost them up, It would put smile on their face and they would be happy to listen to that, I think.
Yes, I think we should have arranged that. But the players are in their bubble. They are focusing. Only the teams have contact with the players apart from the press conferences. So, of course, we are not trying to bother them with messages. But I do think that these are so lovely and the players would appreciate them too.
Well, it was really great to listen. The kids also the adults, and how passionately they are really expressing the way they are rooting for the players. And, of course, it's great. it's great to have fans like that, I think.
Yes, it's also, of course, always a question. They have their favorites. They either root for Fabiano or Magnus. But another thing is if we want to see playoffs, because the playoffs can be very exciting, rapid and bliss chess. We as chess fans would love to see some more action. So I think some of the fans, even though they would want to see Fabiano or Magnus win, maybe they are still rooting for a draw for today so that there will be more games on Wednesday.
Yeah, it is kind of funny, but I can fully understand the audience that they would love to see them playing rapid game match of 4 games, because of course it would be a lot of fun to watch, to be commentating for us, I think.
Are you saying, Julie, that we are rooting for a draw? No.
No, I think we should really see something spectacular today, even though it's extremely difficult for them, because they are also running out of energy. We have to realize that even though they are very young and they're playing here for more than 20 days, they're only playing, that the event started like nearly 20 days. And even the free days, it's not a real free day for the players. So it is very, very difficult for them. And, well, it's clear that everybody thinks that Magnus is the favorite in the playoff, which I'm not so sure that it should be that way. Wow, we have
Look at that view. Magnus Carlsen is the first to arrive for Game 12, and the box is full of photographers. Normally you don't see them because they stand on the other side of the table. But now I think the hall is just so full that there are photographers everywhere.
Yeah,
wow.
Probably both sides. And yeah, interesting that Magnus is already at his board.
The challenger arrives as well. He's going to have the white pieces in this final classical game. The winner of today will be the world champion. We might have a new world champion, Fabiano Caruana, or Magnus Carlsen defends his title. In case of a draw, we'll see the playoffs on Wednesday.
And I see we have the FIDE president just arrived also. Being there.
Yes, Mr. Arkady Dvorkovich is present for the final game, and the first move will be played by the head of global partnerships and sponsorships of Kaspersky Lab, one of the main sponsors, Mr. Aldo Del Bo. I wonder if he wants to make a joke as some of our guests, or he will just go serious.
I think the players were so happy to see Sergei Karyakin yesterday making a joke by playing 1b4 on the board. You could see that finally the players are really laughing, smiling, so they relieved from the tension for a few seconds. So it was a real treat for them, I think. They really felt that.
Yes, it was really a moment of breaking down the tension. Today, if we talk about tension, today is the peak nerve-wracking game. Everything is at stake. It's all or nothing for the player that wins or loses, and it's the world championship title, and at the same time, the world #1 spot. These two players are divided by 3 rating points. If Fabiano wins, he takes over Magnus also in rating.
Well, and just in brackets, we can say that they play for €1 million of prizes.
Yeah, not a bad prize fund, €1 million at stake, 60% for the winner and 40% for the loser.
Well, we had bigger prize funds, but still, it is €1 million that it's going to be divided by the 2 players, even though none of the players can think about money here. There are much, much, much more at stake right now. Being the #1, being the world champion, it is much more than anything else here at this moment.
Very true. It's 1 minute to the start of the final classical game, Game 12. After 11 draws, will we see a result today?
Magnus is hesitating. Will it be E4 or something else?
What is your final prediction, Judith? Will Fabiano go for E4 or D4?
Let's say he'll switch.
He'll switch. I also think he will switch. As we mentioned, Mr. Aldo Del Bo will make the first move, the head of Kaspersky Lab.
And no switch.
E4.
No switch. E4, he feels full confidence in his preparation, which he had for the championship, it seems.
The next question then is Magnus Carlsen's response. Will it be C5 or E5?
It's a big decision, actually. If he prepared also, like against E4, he prepared only C5, And we have C5. Thank you very much. This is a real treat to us, I think, that we are going to see a Sicilian game again. And I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be Rossolimo. But we go all the way to the open Sicilian. There's no other option, I think.
Would you be very surprised if Fabiano switches back to the Rossolimo now?
That
Bishop
would
B5?
disappoint me.
D4, of
D4,
course.
no
The open Sicilian. I was going to say open Spanish, but no, open Sicilian for the third time during the match.
Knight takes D4.
And the Sveshnikov is very likely once again with knight f6, e5 from black.
Well, it's great that it seems like both players has confidence in their preparation, and they're going to be playing the same system. I think e5 is going to be on the board, and of course we have another Sveshnikov, so there is going to be full fight on in this opening, and we had incredible, interesting games in this line in previous games, so we have to expect something very energetic today as well.
I'm curious if it's going to be Fabiano who comes up with yet another new idea. He tried.
I would bet on knight d5 that he's going to be continuing with that, because it is a special structure. So probably he analyzed it a lot.
So far we are following the two previous games with the Open Sicilian, game 8 and game 10.
And knight b8. And not knight b8 this time, but we see knight c7, knight e7.
Okay, so it is Magnus Carlsen who deviates from the previous two games.
Yeah.
Interesting that Magnus doesn't want to go for the same variation with knight b8.
So it seems like knight e7 was a little surprise. Of course, not objectively. Of course, Fabiano is prepared for this move, but still it's going to be a completely different way of playing from black side, because knight on e7 or d7, it makes a huge difference. First of all, that after knight e7, most likely black will develop his bishop to another square, not to e7, because the knight is standing there.
c4 and knight g6 have been played very quickly. Of course, this is all theory. For the first time, we see this knight e7 variation between the two players.
Well, actually, knight b8 is a much more popular move than knight e7, but both are, of course, very logical, and it has its theory also. c4, knight g6 is on the board. Actually, knight f5 was the other main move, which is people consider to be playing that line.
Instead of knight g6, knight f5.
Instead of the last knight move by Carlsen.
We are happy to see this opening on the board, since it means that we will have a double-edged sharp position with basically possibilities for both sides. It's very different from openings like the Berlin, where unfortunately theory is so advanced that white barely gets anything, any chances. So today, both players once again pull out their swords, fighting spirit for the last round, tension at its peak, and everything is at stake. It is one game that can give Fabiano everything he has ever wanted. He's 26 and he has worked his whole life to have this opportunity to become world champion. And with one game, with one chess game, he can win it. But for Magnus, of course, he said that defending his title would be huge. He knows that this is the biggest challenge of his life, his strongest opponent ever. Queen a4, bishop d7.
Yeah, and I saw that just the people from the box just moving away, so they are ignoring that.
Photographers need to leave after the first 5 minutes, so the players will be left alone with the two arbiters. After queen b4, bishop f5, both players are playing very quickly. This is still theory, obviously, and both are very
well
prepared.
It's interesting. I can just whisper that if white plays queen a4, there's a repetition there.
Judith, don't whisper that. No.
Well, of course, it will not happen, but on other hand, it's important, I think, to notice that it is offered by Magnus just in case, just to put extra pressure on Fabiano.
Yes,
that you have to show it all the time. Actually, it could be the move queen a4. Karpov would do that.
Yes?
He would simply do queen a4, bishop d7, queen b4. Checking you.
One more time, but not
Exactly.
3 times. What we are saying is that if the position is repeated 3 times, queen a4, bishop d7, queen b4, bishop f5, and then one more time, queen a4, bishop d7, then it would be a handshake after 7 minutes of play. It's not going to happen.
No, but I'm just saying that psychology is very, very important in chess. And especially we are dealing with a very special and unique game today, which is the last game, or it can be the final game of the World Championship match. And I was tricked quite a lot of times by Karpov and sometimes with other people until I learned that this is a technique of top players in order that just in case they are repeating moves, testing your nerves, if you want to deviate, testing your thoughts, putting you extra pressure. And if nothing else, just gaining 2 extra moves. So later on when you're in time trouble, you have to make 2 moves less, right? So it is very interesting to make these moves or no. Actually, I think it would be, I wouldn't be surprised if queen a4 would be the move just to make 1 repetition.
One more time. So it would be
yeah, it would be just an extra 2 moves include. So we are at, we're going to have 2 moves later in the score sheet, right?
Yes.
Because there is a good chance that can be a time trouble. For later on in this game, like in any other game, it is possible, right?
Fabiano always looks very calm, and we always say that you can't read really his feelings, his emotions. He's got the poker face, but today I see him tensed. Similar facial expression, but of course the tension is so high that even Fabiano, who practices yoga and meditation in order to have inner peace for the game, even he seems to be stressed out right now, and we can understand why.
Well, that's very clear, but I'm curious what he's thinking about, you know? And actually, it is also very interesting that after the move queen b4, which was played by Fabiano in the previous move, in move 11, queen b8, that black is defending the pawn with the queen, that was... so after bishop f5, I'm expecting queen a4 to make a repetition. In other hand, by black, it was possible to defend the pawn. So we have our chessboard. We can go on, and I can show you some of the alternatives. What black has after queen b4, it was possible also to play queen b8 to defend the d6 pawn and keep the bishop on d7 for a moment. There is another move, bishop b5, which was actually queen b8 is the most regular move, but black played bishop f5, which was, there was only very few games on this. And Fabiano did not repeat moves.
No, he played h4 instead, and Magnus immediately responded with h5, preventing the pawn push to h5. White wanted to push h5 to chase this knight away from g6, and since black is lacking space, it would have been very uncomfortable if he has to go back.
Actually, the move bishop f5 in the previous move by Magnus, it was played only in very few games. Only 4 games I see in the database. And h4 was only 1 game, but not just a game, but Kramnik played it. And at the Olympiad...
Kramnik against
Roganovic Milos.
At this year's Chess Olympiad.
Just now, a little bit more than a month ago. And after h4, black played a6, which was not played by Magnus, and then white played h5, knight f4, knight c3, so it was a complicated game. And interestingly enough, Magnus was not interested to play a6, but he immediately stopped the white pawn of going ever to h5. Very unusual position, I must say, of this structure, to have h4, h5, generally speaking, in this structure. Not to talk about the fact that without white is white castled. I wonder why or where white will be castling later stage of the game.
In the position after h4, can you explain why black is not really tempted to try to grab this pawn on h4?
Well, knight h4 would be extremely dangerous. I would think that rook h4 immediately would be the killing move, and after queen takes h4, knight c7, and black has quite a lot of problems, mainly that white is simply taking the rook, but also at the same time in the next move the b7 pawn is hanging, and black would have only a check, whereafter bishop e3 and white keeps his piece up. So of course knight h7 was not possible at all.
Yes, knight h4 is a bad move, that's why h5, preventing h5, since white is threatening to chase the knight away and it didn't have many squares. What shall be the follow-up for Fabiano? He can go back to a4 with the queen now as well if he wants to.
Yeah, it is interesting because it was also not my style of putting repetition of moves in games. But I'm quite sure that I think Karpov was just not missing out a single chance to do so, because he knew exactly that when it's moved 38, it would be much better that it's moved 40 already. You know?
Yes.
So, but it's interesting that Fabiano's character is different. My character was also very different, that I just didn't feel the need to do so. I always felt that I have to go straight forward and not stop for a moment for two moves, going back and forth. But later on I also did it a few times, but it was interesting that maybe he didn't want to see the other option, queen b8. Maybe he was more worried about that. I don't know. But one thing is clear, that Fabiano wants to win today. And he wants to give the most difficult questions towards Magnus. And we see something very, very interesting already at the beginning of the opening. Move 12, there was no single game on this position, and we are only move 12 at the moment.
So basically h5 by Magnus Carlsen is a novelty in this position. The only game that happened with h4 earlier, as Judith mentioned, is the game of Vladimir Kramnik from this year's Chess Olympiad, but thereafter h4, black played a6. So we are in a completely new territory. Fabiano is thinking. Usually, whenever it was his preparation, he played the first moves very quickly, and now he's sinking into thought. Doesn't mean that he doesn't know the position at all.
No, actually, he should know it very well, and he should know what exactly he wants to do. The only thing is that you can't imagine what pressure he has. I mean, maybe it's the last day for him fighting with Magnus for the crown. And this is not funny.
It's not fun at all.
Today he can be in heaven, but he can be in hell too.
Yes.
And it goes for both players.
Just to sum up the format of the World Chess Championship, in order to challenge the world champion, you need to go through a series of tournaments, and Fabiano had to earn his spot by winning the Candidates Tournament this year in March in Berlin. And that tournament itself was very strong. All the top players were there. Everybody wants to challenge the world champion because they all want to win the world championship. So the system itself is very difficult to get the chance, first of all, to play the match, and then to get the better of Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, I mean, you can always discuss about the format, how to select the top players to play the Candidates Tournament or matches already before the World Championship match to figure out who is going to be the challenger. But I think this format of having a tournament is very nice for the audience, for the chess fans. And we see that Fabiano is not here by chance. I mean, he was already extremely close in 2016. And he was head-to-head with Karyakin, and in the last moment he gave an extremely big chance, tactical opportunity to Sergei, and he just grabbed it. And practically with the white pieces up to move 36, he was continuously equal or worse position for Sergei, and then there was a tactical blow which was possible to make for Sergei, and finally he became the challenger. And after that, 2 years later, Fabiano is there again with all his energy, all this optimism, again in an 8-player double round-robin event, and he wins extremely comfortably and convincingly, even though he also shaked when he had the lead.
In one of the last rounds.
He had already the lead. He was very close to victory, and then things went off the road for him, but then in the last second everything was clear and he really won it practically convincingly. So he has, he's here for good reason, absolutely. And but I'm sure he's shaking now inside. I mean, it is such a stressful situation, and it's an opening which anything can happen, right? So he very much has to think until what kind of degree of risk he's ready to take today. Can he go further than in previous games? But after H4, it's a 50-50. I mean, it's definitely for 3 results. We cannot talk about it that it's either white will be winning this game or a draw. It's not that. He's taking risk. By playing H4, he's risking a lot. Because if we look at the position that if white wants to castle, eventually he has to play G3, and possibly he will develop his bishop to G2 and castle. So this is one of the option to do so. There is another move which can be considered, of course, going bishop G5, but I don't see why it would be so nice. Probably white would be, well, black has 2 options. He can play bishop E7 or F6 as well. F6 I don't like so much because white would be just coming back with his bishop, and then somehow the black king has a strange atmosphere around him with all these pawns on F6, weak spots.
Yes, weak spots on the light squares. But if bishop E7, can you show us what happens after bishop takes E7?
Yeah, after bishop E7, black would just going to play king E7.
Natural developing move, king to E7.
And actually, the queen and the king protects together the D6 pawn against the white queen from B4 to D6, and the knight is also attacking. So actually king E7 is the only move for black. But it would seem that black has a great position. I would take the black pieces at this stage already. So white really has to be very careful how he continues the game, because here white is behind in development. Black is threatening with knight F4, so the simple developing move would be not very advised, because knight on F4 would be extremely strong. In other hand, if white would be playing G3, first of all to defend the H4 pawn and also stop the knight to come to F4, then already black could play bishop E4 and take control over the white squares. Or later, it's also possible to play E4 and knight to E5, which has a drawback to give the pawn, the square on D4 for the knight. So for the moment, it would be not so much advised. But bishop
I just
G5
wanted
will
to
be.
add that if you are starting with your chess career, then don't copy Magnus Carlsen. You are supposed to castle. That's the basic principle in chess. Place your king in safety. King E7 works in some positions if the position is closed. So here you see that there's a pawn on E5, on D6. There are no open files where white can attack this king on E7. But don't try it at home if you are just starting, because it's not so easy to understand these positions.
In other hand, we have queen A4 on the board.
Queen A4 now, bishop D7, queen B4, repeating as you mentioned, but now that the pawn is on H4, it's not the same scenario. So the 3/4 repetition would need to be now with the pawns on H4 and H5. We have had it one time so
it's
far.
clear Magnus was not even hesitating for a fraction of a second, right? He just moved back bishop F5, immediately throwing all the pressure on Fabiano. But of course, Fabiano also did this only for really for the reasons we were discussed before, that for later time trouble, it's useful to have 2 moves later.
But if he wants to do that, if he wants to play the Karpov way, then he should play queen A4 now very quickly, confidently, one time more. He can do that because the pawn is on H4. So they had the position earlier with queen.
No, he cannot.
Didn't he have queen A4, bishop D7
no,
without
we had
the pawn?
H4, H5, so this is one first time.
But he can do it one more time. No?
He can go queen a4 one more time, but after bishop d7, he cannot go back to b4, because after
that's
bishop
true.
f5, that would be the third.
It's very tricky. It's very tricky.
So he cannot do it again. What he could do is, before h4, make a repetition,
And then
play
h4.
h4 and after h5, to make it again. So he could win 2 more tempis this way.
Yes, the point of the threefold repetition, it has to be the exact same position, so it matters that before the pawn was on h2 and now it's on h4. It's not about the moves themselves, queen a4, bishop d7.
Yeah, even this way, we see that there is already 17 minutes behind on his clock, Fabiano, which is not a very good sign, I must say.
Now Magnus has collected almost 6 minutes. He started out with 1 hour and 40 minutes. There's the time control.
In other hand, of course, knight e7 was not necessarily what Fabiano was having his mind on. Probably he thought that knight b8 would be more chance to be played, but still it is very surprising if he's out of book. But he cannot be simply. You don't play h4 if you're not analyzing h5. So now there is a lot of psychological battle is going on at the same time, parallel, by playing the moves, which we just saw a little of that by repeating queen a4, queen b4 with white. So bishop e3 is something to be considered, I think. It is a very logical developing move, for example. But in other hand, I have the feeling that white has to be somehow very fast in his ideas. Maybe even c5 should be the move. Because if black has the time to develop with his bishop to e7, castle, then I see this h4 is really something white will be not happy with.
So you're suggesting that Fabian has to play either bishop e3 and try to push c5 very quickly?
Well, maybe even to sacrifice now. I'm not sure. I was not analyzing this position. But somehow I have the feeling that white has to be very concrete, very sharp, and straightforward in this game. Because black, for the moment, I feel that bishop on f5 is extremely active, controlling this diagonal, the white squares. White bishop is unable to develop to d3, which would be actually the best square for his bishop. So because of this, I mean, you can play very risky and play for a win, but you don't want to start with the first position with white, right? And this is exactly what Magnus is hoping for, that Fabiano wants to go for a win so much that he will be making mistakes that actually can cost him the game.
Yes. At the press conference, of course, Fabiano was asked about his strategy for today, and he said that, yes, of course, he's always in fighting spirit, so that was not the question. He takes it for granted that he always fights, but he also added that he will try to put pressure on Magnus, but at the same time, he is not going to go crazy. If today is a draw, we will see playoffs on Wednesday, so it wouldn't be the end of the World Championship for Fabiano either, even though almost everyone believes that Magnus has better chances in shorter time controls, since Magnus has won World Rapid and Blitz Championships earlier. In 2014, he had all 3 titles. The World Classical, Rapid and Blitz champion was Magnus Carlsen in 2014.
In other hand, if we are going to have a draw today and we move on to the playoff in rapid games, then all the pressure is again on Magnus, because everybody thinks that he has a bigger chance than Fabiano to win the match in a 4-game rapid. And of course, Magnus has also a lot of confidence in doing so. But still, then it's definitely everything on his shoulder that, of course, everybody thinks I'm better than Fabiano, I should win in rapid. And it will be definitely not so easy as some people think, that it's a clear cut that he's going to win the playoff.
Of course. Even though Magnus is world #1 in rapid chess and Fabiano, his rapid rating is only world #8, and there's 101 rating point difference between the two in rapid chess. 101. In classical, it's only 3 points. Yeah, Magnus Carlsen's rapid rating, 2,880, is quite impressive.
But it's also bizarre that in this position, even if Fabiano would think that I'm scared, I don't like this position, I made a bad preparation, it's too risky what I want to play, it's kind of impossible to play Queen A4, Bishop D7, Queen B4 and making a draw. I mean, and this is exactly what I think Magnus is playing for, that Fabiano is fighting with himself first.
Shall I make a draw? Shall I just...
No, I don't think he should be thinking of making a draw, but if he does, it's a problem. It's a huge problem.
I agree with you that it's a problem if he is doubting what his strategy should be, and if he's taking too much risk already by pushing H4, as you mentioned, he will have to play very precisely. The position too, he must have analyzed it with his team, but he's using so much time. It makes me wonder if he doesn't remember exactly his analysis, since he was focusing on knight b8. Magnus Carlsen deviated from game 8 and game 10 by playing knight e7 in the opening, and that is the moment that surprised Fabiano. He should know this position, but maybe not as much or not as recently revised this position as the knight b8 variation. That could be the problem if he doesn't remember exactly.
The situation is unbelievably strange to me, because he's getting like more than 20 minutes of behind his clock. I don't like his position for white. Okay, that's my taste. That's another story. But having your pawn on h4 at such an early stage without having castle, then you cannot castle alongside. That's very clear. There's no way. And I can see that he's nervous.
Yes, for the first time I feel like we can see his
hand is moving. I don't know, but something is not right for Fabi now.
No, it wasn't right in game 1, and he almost lost game 1. He had a lost position, he was behind on the clock, and he's not as nervous, though, as in game 1. That was the first ever game he played at the World Championship match. Let's just remember, this is his first World Championship.
Okay, Bishop E3.
Bishop
Go
E3.
straight forward.
We are not saying that he's in trouble, but there are signs that show that he is more nervous than Magnus Carlsen.
I'm thinking, actually, maybe it's also a strategy that he's spending time giving the message that I'm confused. Because I'm just looking at, first of all, he wants to take this pawn on a7, right?
Yes.
And so if black plays a6, finally, I think white can go c5. I think this might be a huge trick,
a6, c5.
Because if black would be taking on b5, bishop takes b5, and if king e7, white goes c takes d6. If black takes with the queen, then bishop c5 wins the queen, right? And if black goes out to f6, suddenly we realize why h4 was essential, because bishop g5 goes and mates.
It would be mate
right?
in 19
So you never
moves.
know
New
why
world champion.
h4. And you don't know why h4. I think we can have this position for a little while.
Beautiful. This is how the challenger can win the championship. Bishop g5 mate.
Okay, so this is finally, we see immediately, quite a few moves later, why h4 was dangerous, but for both sides. This is why I said before that it has to be something concrete for white, because otherwise it's just a very dangerous pawn to be losing on h4. So actually after a6, if c5, if we go on with a takes b5, bishop b5, so king e7 was not possible. If black goes bishop d7, white can move on to go c6. And after b takes c6, d takes c6. And I think white is really taking over as the bishop has to move, but then c7 wins the queen. So again, another line which shows that after c5, a takes b5 is not possible. If black would be taking on c5, that is a question, whether bishop c5 is possible. I have the feeling that bishop c5 is not good, because of takes on c5, takes, and already black can take the knight on b5, and after bishop b5, bishop d7, and actually black is a piece down. So after c5, d takes c5, bishop c5 definitely not the right move, but maybe white would be just going queen a4. But after queen a4, bishop d7. So queen a4, I don't know what he can do. Because on queen a4, I think the problem of white can be that bishop d7, and then white cannot do anything. So what else can white have? Well, maybe after all it was only a dreaming by me that c5 and we get complications, so probably just simply not good enough.
It was
But
beautiful,
it was a good
Judith.
try.
I loved it. Are you sure it's not working?
Yeah, I think after c5, d takes c5, and after that the knight can be taken. So probably after a6, knight a3 would be the move. And then the queen is attacking the b7, and also white is ready to play bishop b6, or possibly knight a4 and knight b6, but in some way to take advantage of the weakness. And we have a6.
A6 has been played, so we have this question now on the board for Fabiano, whether c5 is possible or not.
I think we're going to see knight c3 shortly.
Do you think he will play very quickly, or think?
I do think he's going to play quickly knight c3.
I'm just nervous simply by looking at them. There's so much tension. Okay, Fabiano. Knight move or c5? Brilliancy. Maybe AlphaZero knows if c5 works.
Well, I wouldn't give credit to that move anymore.
No. It was a beautiful mate, but after d takes c5 it didn't work, so the knight is back on c3 as Judith predicted it correctly.
But it was a nice mate.
It was.
To joke around with. Yeah, Fabiano is behind 20 minutes, but probably he's not behind in preparation.
You still think it's his preparation?
Which is more important.
He used 20 minutes, but he still knows the position.
Yeah, he has to, I think. He has to know what's going on here. So now the main question is for black how to defend the pawn on b7, or at all he wants to be defending it, because there are many ways of defending the pawn. Queen d7 would be not a good way to defend, because then I think knight a4 would be very strong, and coming with the knight to b6, immediately pointing out the weakness of black position. For example, what happens, let's see, if knight takes on h4. Can black take this pawn? I think the biggest problem could be for black is that white might be going c5, and by playing c5, attacking immediately the h4 knight. So black can only move away his knight, and then I think, for example, queen a4 would be the most unpleasant for black, as after queen d7, it's either c6. Yeah, c6 is possible, but also actually there is a concrete tactical way of playing bishop b5, because black cannot take it with the pawn, as the rook is under attack. So this is one idea in this kind of position, that black has to be careful, but also c6 would be extremely strong, as after taking takes the problem of black that